Hey everyone. Hey everyone. Welcome to the 5th episode of Life Unmothered, a journey from hopeless to hope. So, first and foremost, I got my mic on this week, y'all, so y'all can hear me. Okay? So I made sure that, my apologies for last week. I was just so excited, forgot to turn my mic on. But anyway, y'all, I just want to tell y'all thank you so much. Like this, y'all showing out, man. And I really, 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 really appreciate y'all for real, because I believe in this. And like I told y'all before, if you don't believe in your work, who's going to believe in you? You got to step 10 toes down for what you believe in. So I've been doing footwork, y'all. I've been doing some footwork. Okay. So, but I'm excited. I'm excited to see where this go. So for y'all that don't know, I started a YouTube channel. So I really, 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 really encourage y'all to go follow the YouTube channel. You can look it up by my name, Mona Griffin, and you will see my picture. You will see my picture on there. So I encourage y'all to go follow YouTube, because pretty soon I'm going to be doing all my lives over there. So you guys don't want to miss out on the live. So I encourage y'all, if you have not, go follow the YouTube channel. It's called Life Unmothered. You can look it up, Life Unmothered, or you can look up my name, Mona Griffin. Okay. So also, yay. Also, yay. I told y'all, this is not just a moment. It's a movement, right? Y'all be on the lookout for the article in the Global magazine. I am having an article. I am being featured in an article in a Global magazine, y'all. So I told y'all, God is so good. God is amazing. But this is not just a moment. This is a true movement. And I am happy. I'm blessed. I'm honored. And I'm just going to keep pushing. I'm going to keep pushing for the vision that God showed me, for the healing of generations to come. I am going to keep pushing. I did some footwork this week, to go to mental health facilities. I'm still doing footwork. So, I'm trying to allow this book to reach the masses, right? And I appreciate the ones who have received the book so far. I encourage y'all to work the work that's in this book. Like, don't just read the book and sit it to the side or pass it along. Yes, I encourage y'all to pass it along. However, work the work. Work the work that's in this book, y'all. It's very eye-opening, positive, and it will get you to start understanding your why bubble, right? Because we have to pop the why bubble. We don't know why we're struggling. We don't know where these unconscious emotions are coming from. We can't even put a name to them because we don't know what's happening in our body, right? So I encourage y'all to work the work and then pass it along. So I appreciate it again. I'm going to say it and I'm going to say it again. Thank y'all so much. So tonight's episode, as y'all can see, and what I've been promoting, is spiritual bypassing. The reason why I'm touching on this subject tonight, and this is a very uncomfortable subject, I understand it, right? However, I know what it is because, like I told y'all, I'm a product of what I talk about. I just don't make up stuff. I just don't pull stuff out the air. I'm a product of what I talk about, y'all. So spiritual bypassing is so real. It's so real. And a lot of people in the churches don't even know that they're doing it because it's unconscious. And so I'm here to bring awareness to the unconscious so that we can wake up and be conscious of the things that we do. It's not easy, y'all. This work, this healing work, this shadow work, this inner child work, it's not easy. It's not going to be fun either. It's going to be messy. It's going to be messy, but at the end of the day, after you get through the mess, you will have a message. You get through the mess, you're going to come out with a message. So I'm going to read my statement before I get started. This show was born from pain that I never deserved and the healing I've fiercely fought for. I know what it's like to be unmothered. I grew up without the nurture, the protection, or love I needed. I was raised in trauma, told to stay silent and expect to smile through it all. But I also know what it's like to break the cycle, reclaim your voice, and rewrite your story. My mission, my life's purpose is to shine the light on childhood trauma, abuse, and pain that most people are too scared to talk about, to expose the wounds we were taught to hide, and to help others rise from them too. This is not just a show. This is a movement, a mirror, a safe house for truth. It's for the ones who were told to get over it, but never had a chance to process it. It's for the inner child still wanting to be seen, because healing isn't just personal, it's generational. And I'm not just healing for me, I'm healing for my lineage and to help others do the same. So if you ever felt unseen, unloved, or unmothered, you are not alone, and we're healing together. Yeah. So let's jump into this spiritual bypassing. And I know y'all asking, well, what is it? I'm going to break it down because that's what we do. We break stuff down. Spiritual bypassing is when someone uses spiritual beliefs or practice to avoid, suppress, or sidestep painful emotions, unresolved wounds, or uncomfortable truths, especially those rooted in trauma. Right? So, spiritual bypassing and trauma looks like. This is what it looks like. And when I was doing this research, like I told y'all, I'm a product of what I speak about. Everything. I went through it. I dealt with it, but my healing journey is every day, y'all. It's every day. It's every day. But as long as I'm walking on that right path, I see the light. I've gained the part to where I'm living outside of trauma. I'm not living in it. I'm recanting my story. I'm not reliving my story. But however, I'm still human and I still feel the emotions when I recant. And that's okay, But I lived through this, so that's why I'm bringing it forward. So spiritual bypassing trauma healing looks like love and light only. Don't dwell on the past. Just focus on love and positivity. This denies the lived experience of people who suffered abuse, neglect, or systematic harm. Healing requires looking at the darkness before we can genuinely move to the light, y'all. That's why I told y'all. In order to move forward, the saying say, sometimes you got to take 2 steps back in order to move 2 steps forward. You have to. Healing requires looking at the darkness before you can genuinely move to the light. So that means that we got to travel back. We got to travel back to those dark spots, right? In order to start true healing. It also says premature forgiveness. Y'all listen to this. Premature forgiveness. You need to forgive them so you can be free. Now, how many people, how, we all done said this. We all done said it. So there's no surprise. There's no, ooh. No, we all done said this. Forgiveness is powerful. Listen to this. Forgiveness is powerful, but when rushed, it becomes a form of silencing. Trauma survivors often need validation and safety before they can even consider forgiveness. Y'all, when I went to the church, and I'm not saying church is a bad place, right? But it's a lot of mask wearing in the church, and we're gonna break that down. But however, the first thing that people was telling me when I decided to share my story, because a lot of people don't share their story. A lot of people don't share their truths in the church. They don't. Or they give you the sugar-coated version of what actually happened. But anyway, all I kept hearing was, you got to forgive. You got to forgive. You got to forgive. And I was trying to rush it, but it didn't sit right with me because that's not how I felt inside. So what I did more damage than good because I was prolonging my healing. I was prolonging my healing, trying to rush forgiveness, right? It says karma as justification. Maybe this happened because something in your past life. This frames trauma as something earned or deserved, which can reinforce shame and prevent survivors from seeking justice or healing. Y'all hear that? Karma. Maybe this happened for something you did, and it's your karma. So that teaches us, well, maybe it is, so maybe I deserve it. No. Bypassing anger and grief. Don't be angry. That's low vibrational. Don't be angry. That's low vibrational. Anger is sacred emotions in trauma recovery. Anger is a sacred emotion in trauma recovery. It signals boundaries were crossed. Grief is necessary mourning. Denying these emotions keep people stuck in spiritual performance rather than transformation. Did y'all hear what it just said? Because you angry and you show your anger and grief. It keeps you stuck in spiritual performance rather than transformation. Y'all, that's deep. Hyper individuals, you manifest your reality. While manifesting is value, telling a trauma survivor they created their own abuse, minimize systematic, generational, or developmental trauma, right? So let's go into why spiritual bypassing is harmful in trauma recovery, right? So when you really deep into your healing process, why spiritual bypassing is harmful. Delays true healing. Didn't I just tell y'all that I prolong my healing? It delays true healing by skipping essential emotional processing. It re-traumatizes survivors by invalidating their pain. Shames normal trauma responses like depression, anger, and fear. Creates disconnection from the body, emotions, and reality. When embodiment is what trauma healing actually requires. It keeps the cycle going by spiritualizing silence and endurance, y'all. I'm gonna let y'all breathe for a minute. Just take that in. Just take that in, right? These are signs you might be spiritually bypassing your trauma. These are the signs that you might be spiritually bypassing your trauma, right? Meaning we in church and we, you know what I'm saying? Like they say you're performing instead of transforming in the church. So signs that you might be spiritually bypassing your trauma. You rush to forgive before allowing yourself to feel betrayed or hurt, right? So we don't sit in that. We don't sit in that. We just, I gotta forgive, right? I gotta forgive in order to feel better. I gotta forgive in order for me to move on. You're rushing your forgiveness. That's not true forgiveness. That's not true forgiveness. You avoid talking about your past because it feels low vibrational. You feel guilty for being sad, anxious, or angry. So you try to meditate it away. Yeah. You rely on affirmations or crystals while avoiding therapy or shadow work. You reject any conversation that feels too heavy or too negative. Those are signs that you might be spiritually bypassing your trauma, right? So what trauma healing actually requires, not bypass. What true healing actually requires, but not bypassing, not spiritually bypassing. This is what it truly requires. Naming, y'all. Come on, spirit. When I told y'all, we got to name our trauma. We have to put a voice to our trauma, right? So it says you got to name and validating the pain. This happened. It hurt. I did not deserve this. Safety, supportive spaces with trauma-infused healers, therapists, or community who don't rush you through your healing, right? They're not telling you to, what did I say? They're not telling you to don't dwell on it. Just focus on love and positivity. They're not telling you you need to forgive them so you can be free, right? They're community that don't rush you through your healing. Shadow work. Facing the parts of yourself that still hold shame, rage, grief, and fear, right? Embodiment. Healing through the body, y'all. Because we already discussed healing is stored in your body. So you have to do the work. Healing through the body. Some breath work, nervous system work, because trauma lives there, right? So, prayer, meditation as tools of integration, not avoidance, y'all. We got to use prayer and meditation as tools of integration, not avoidance. Okay. It says you can be spiritual and face your trauma. Real spiritual growth is messy. It weeps on the bathroom floor. It's confronting your family patterns. It's saying, I'm not okay, but I'm willing to feel this so I can become whole. It's not, you're not less enlightened for feeling angry. You're not unhealed because you haven't forgiven. You're human. I need y'all to understand that. I need you to understand that spiritual bypassing is real, y'all. We can't just go to the church and hide under the Bible verses that's soothing us, right? Because they're going to soothe us, but it's more to it than just getting the scriptures and getting soothed. You have to do the inner work, because regardless, trauma is stored in our body. Regardless if we read, regardless, the trauma is stored in our body. So we have to go deeper with our work. It's not surface level work, right? So let's keep going. So it says, spiritual bypassing is when people use spiritual beliefs, practices, or language to avoid dealing with emotional wounds, unsolved trauma, or psychological discomfort. It can show up differently. Y'all listen. It can show up differently in men and women due to social conditioning, gender roles, and how we're taught to express our pain. Okay. Here's a breakdown of how spiritual bypassing shows up in both women and men, individually and relation. So in men, right? In men, it shows up as a spiritual warrior. Use spirituality to justify emotional suppression, right? Believes feeling pain is weakness, and that I've transitioned emotion. Saying things like it's all in God's hands instead of processing grief or fear, right? It says detached sage persona, right? Becomes the teacher. Now this is what bypassing trauma is showing up in men. Okay. You become the teacher, but not the student of his own wounds. Y'all, we got leaders that's trying to touch on your wounds, but they don't touch on their own, right? May quote scriptures instead of naming or sitting with their own pain. Do y'all hear that? Now, this is bypassing in men. In men, this is how it shows up in men. Misusing masculinity in energy teaching. Embracing distorted versions of divine masculine to maintain control or dominance. Believe healing means mastering emotions, not feeling them. That's in the men. Believing, I know this all too. Yes, honey. Believing in, now this is in men, y'all. Believing healing means mastering your emotions, not feeling them. Frames emotional needs, his or others, as low vibrational or unhealed femininity, right? Okay. So it says avoiding accountability. Now, this is what spirituality bypassing looks like in men. We're going to get to the women, but I'm explaining the men right now. So it says avoid accountability, saying we're all one and everything is love, to avoid apologizing or taking responsibility, dismissing anger or confrontation with low frequency. Okay. Now, this is how it shows up in the women. The love and light mask. That's what it's called. Bypassing spiritual bypassing in women. It says smiling through emotional pain, claiming everything happens for a reason. How many times we done heard that? How many times have we heard that everything happens for a reason, right? In women suppresses anger, grief, or trauma to stay high vibrational or divine. Feels shame when struggling, believing she should be more involved, right? So this is when you see the people in the church that's just so involved, right? So it's like she believes, she feels shame when struggling, so believes she should be more involved to suppress her shame. Guys, Come on, let's keep going. Perfectionism in healing. Now, this is the spiritual bypassing when it's dealing with the women. So, perfectionism in healing feels pressure to heal perfectly or quickly to stay aligned. Uses crystals, sage, or rituals to mask unprocessed pain. Y'all. Thinks if she's still hurting, she's failing spiritually. Shaming emotional leads. Believes sadness or depression means she's not trusting God enough. Tries to pray or manifest her way out of deep trauma without addressing the wounds. Y'all, did you hear what it says? Tries to pray and manifest her way out of the deep trauma without addressing her root. Y'all, that was me. I was in the church. I was praying so hard that God would keep my secret, that I wouldn't tell, that nobody would find out. But I was still bleeding on the inside, right? I was still bleeding. So, shared patterns in both genders, right? We're going to keep going. Bypassing phases. These are the phases. And then we're going to get into what it avoids. So the phases of bypassing, it all happens for a reason. What it's avoiding is grief, confusion, and injustice. I've already healed that. What is avoiding? Ongoing, deeper layers of pain. Focus on the positivity. Suppress anger. What it avoids is suppressed anger and unmet needs. That's just your ego. A valid emotional boundary or guilt instincts. You create your reality. Situations rooted in trauma, abuse, or systematic oppressions. Okay? What actually needed instead? What actually is needed instead, y'all? Instead of those things, right? Embodiment. You need to come back to your body to feel and not flee from your pain. You got to come back to your body to feel it and not flee from your pain. Emotional intelligence. And the first thing it says on that, you got to name it. You got to name sadness. You got to name rage. You got to name shame. You got to name the fear without judgment. You have to name these things without judgment. Boundaries. Saying no when someone dishonor your healing. Even in spiritual communities. That means the churches. Shadow work. Facing the messy parts of yourself with honesty and compassion. Facing, it says you got to face the messy parts of yourself with honesty and compassion. Community healing. Safe spaces that allows men to cry and women to rage without being labeled unspiritual. Right? So we finna get a little bit deeper into the meat and potatoes of this, okay? We finna get a little bit deeper. And I appreciate the people that's watching. I appreciate the people in the background too that ain't clicking on the live. I see y'all out there. Hey, learn something. I pray that y'all learning something. But let's keep going. Just going to church won't heal your trauma. Did y'all hear what it said? Just going to church won't heal your trauma. For many, church is the first and sometimes only place we're taught to seek comfort, redemption, or belonging. And it's true. It's true. But Spiritual trauma, emotional suppressing, and generational pain don't get healed by attendance alone. Y'all take that in. You can sit in a pew every Sunday. You can sing every hymn, shout every amen, and still be broken, numb, angry, confused, and unhealed inside. Come on, spirit. Baby, that was me. That was me. I was definitely bypassing spiritually. Let's keep going. Here's why just going to church isn't enough. Church culture can reward performance, not healing. You've praised your praise for how strong your faith is, even if you're falling apart silently. There's pressure to look healed instead of being real. There's pressure to look healed instead of being real. That's what it says. Yep. Many are taught that faith without doubt is holy, so you learn to fake it. I was clapping in church, but crying in silence. Yeah. Many churches preach forgiveness, but not boundaries. You're told to forgive abusers instantly, even when they've never apologized. You're shamed for feeling anger, bitter, or betrayal. Trauma becomes your fault if you're not letting go fast enough. Forgiveness without processing is spiritual bypassing, not healing. Did y'all hear what it said? Forgiveness without processing. You got to process what happened. You got to go through the changes. You got to feel. You got to name. You got to talk. Forgiveness without processing is spiritual bypassing, not healing. Spiritual teachings can be weaponized to avoid pain. Spiritual teachings can be weaponized to avoid pain. Y'all, pray it away. You need more faith. That depression is the devil. God won't give you more than you can handle. These are not trauma-informed responses. These are not trauma-informed responses. They're spiritual coping mechanisms that keep you from going deeper, y'all. Spiritual coping mechanisms from keeping you going deeper, y'all. It's a root that we got to get to pluck, right? It's a root there, meaning it's your inner child that's there. You got to go back to get to that inner child, y'all. Not spiritual coping mechanisms. You can pray daily and still not know how to feel safe in your own body. I told y'all, trauma lives in our body, and it's going to remind us that it's there. The nervous system needs more than scripture. Trauma lives in the body. I just told y'all. The nervous system doesn't respond to sermons. It responds to safety, regulation, and connections. Reading the Bible is powerful, and you need the word. Reading the Bible is powerful. However, your inner child doesn't need more verses. It needs to be held, heard, and loved and healed, your inner child does. Your inner child does. So it's we need to learn that sacred work to get to our inner child. Right? So how do you start healing from spiritual bypassing? Right? How do you start healing from, I told y'all, I'm not going to take y'all down without bringing y'all back up. How do you start healing? First thing it says, name what you were taught to avoid. We got to name what we were taught to avoid. Make a list. It says make a list. What feelings and questions did my spiritual upbringing tell me were wrong? Right? And ask yourself, what have I spiritually silenced that's still hurting? Yep. Let yourself feel what you were taught to fear. Let yourself feel what you were taught to fear. Meaning you got to feel the rage. You got to feel the grief. You got to feel the confusion. You got to feel the doubt, and you got to feel the loneliness. These are not signs of weak faith. They are invitations into deeper truths. Scream, cry, journal, sit with your feelings without rushing to fix them. You don't have to rush to fix your pain. You know, you don't have to rush to fix it, but you do have to feel it and sit with it. Healing begins when pretending ends. True healing begins when pretending ends. Y'all, let's keep going. Do the shadow work, right? It's shadow work. And we trust me, I'm going to break down all of this stuff because I really need y'all to understand that it's deeper. It goes deep. It really does. It goes deep. Do the shadow work. Spiritual bypassing avoids the shadow. That's what it says. Spiritual bypassing avoids the shadow. That puts you, that part of you that feels unworthy, angry, or shamed. True healing faces those shadows with honesty and love. Y'all got to be for real about what happened. Y'all got to tell the parts of you that you are so afraid to talk about. You got to say it. You got to say it. You got to say it. You got to speak it. You got to reveal it. Reveal it in order to heal it. You got to. It says you don't need to choose between God and healing. You don't. You need to release the version of spirituality that told you healing might hide your wounds. You need to release the version of spirituality that told you healing might hide your wounds. God doesn't want your performance. He wants your wholeness. God doesn't want your performance. He wants your wholeness. Okay. Permission to be angry. So it's like we can't feel in the church because if we do, we're not going to heaven. We're going to go to hell if we feel angry. If we talk about what really hurt us, that's sin, being sinful. But that's true healing. That's holy work. Permission to be angry. Jesus flipped tables, right? And I had the scripture pulled up. because I want to let y'all know. So it says Matthews 21:12-13, Mark 11:15-17, John 2:13-16. These passages describe Jesus driving out those who were buying and selling in the temple courts, overturning tables, and rebuking them for turning God's house into a den of robbers. Okay? Jesus flipped tables. Anger is not sin. Anger is an alarm that something wasn't okay. If you were abused, neglected, or silenced, anger isn't rebellion. It's righteous. It's a righteous response. Spiritual bypassing says, let it go. But healing says, let it be heard. Come on. Let's keep going. It says, rest from performing. Rest from performing in church. Rest. If your worth is tied to spiritual, if your worth is tied to how spiritual you act, you're not free. You're hustling. Real healing allows you to be messy and still be worthy. You don't have to earn love to act. You don't have to earn love by acting healed. You can be in a process and still be held by grace. Y'all. It says tend to your nervous system. You can't pray it away. A dysregulated body. Healing means calming the survival responses in your brain and in your body. Learn breath work, grounding, safe touch, systematic therapy. Your nervous system needs to be safe, not to be told it is safe. Your body needs to feel safe, not just being told it's safe. Right? Yeah. Let's keep going. What the church never told me about healing. Men and women who were taught to perform faith, but never was shown how to process pain. This isn't anti-God. It's pro-truth. It's for the believers who were left bleeding under Bible verses. The ones who shouted hallelujah while silently breaking. And the ones who needed permission to be human again. When church taught me to hide, you learn how to show up polished, not honest. You were taught to perform, not to process. Praise your way through it was the code to don't talk about it. Y'all, did y'all hear that? Praise your way through it is the code to not talk about it. Healing begins when pretending ends. I told y'all that. Verses can soothe, but your nervous system needs more than theology. Trauma lives in your body, not just your mind. Whew, yeah. Let's keep going. You were guilted into forgiving, not guided through the process. You were guilted into forgiving, not guided through the process. In many spiritual places, especially in church settings, forgiveness is treated like a moral emergency. It's treated like a moral emergency. You're told you need to forgive or God won't forgive you. Don't let bitterness take root. You're holding up your own blessings by holding a grudge. What does it teach? These teachers shame. These teachings shame you into rushing a process that should be sacred and personal. So what happens? You say the words, I forgive them, while your body still trembles. Your nervous system is still reacting. You still feel unsafe, unseen, and unheard. That's not healing. That's spiritual bypassing dressed as righteousness, y'all. Yep. So it says, forgiveness without processing is spiritual suppressing. You cannot forgive what you haven't named. You can't forgive what you haven't named. And that's so real. You can't forgive what you haven't felt. You can't forgive what you haven't grieved. You can't forgive what you haven't understood. You can't forgive and set boundaries around, right? Forgiveness is not the first step. The first step is safety, honesty, validation. Those come first before the forgiveness. Y'all, nobody ever told me that. And when I started on my healing journey, right? And of course, like I told y'all, we are to forgive. We got to forgive. We got to forgive in order to move on. How does a person process that when they're not ready to forgive? How? They're not ready to. I didn't forgive my mother for the things that were done to me until 7 years after I started my healing journey. It took 7 years, but I finally forgave her, right? Because why? Because my healing filled that void to allow me to forgive her. My healing journey. That's what needed to come first for me. Safety, honesty, and validation. Right? So the harm that forced forgiveness can cause. When forgiveness is rushed, you may invalidate your own pain. And that's what I did. You may stay in toxic relationships longer. You may gaslight yourself into thinking maybe it wasn't that bad. You end up carrying shame on top of your trauma because you forgave them but still felt broken. Because you forgave them but still didn't feel safe. Because you forgave them and now feel guilty for being angry. Yes. What do you do instead? Right? So this is what you do instead. Give yourself permission to pause. You don't owe anyone peace at the cost of your own. Feel before you forgive. Forgiveness is not a substitute for grief, rage, or healing. Protect yourself first. Boundaries are often more urgent than mercy. Give them mercy. You gotta give yourself boundaries. Redefine forgiveness. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean reconnecting. It doesn't mean saying it's okay. It means I'm choosing to release what no longer serves my healing, but only when I'm ready. Yep. Yeah, this is I'm just giving a moment to just breathe, literally, because I know that it's a lot to take in. I know it is. It's a lot to take in, but it's what's needed to be heard. It's what's needed to be heard, because they say that it's a lot of sick people in the church, right? And I'm speaking on myself. I was one of the sick people in the church. I really was. And I thought that by me servicing, that I will get better. Avoiding my own trauma, not talking about it, trying to keep myself busy in the church. I thought that I would get better, but I wasn't. I was suppressing it even deeper, and I was still bleeding inside. Of course, it would soothe me, but it really didn't heal me. And yes, it didn't. However, God is real. He really is. He is real. And he's going to be there through the hurtful times. And he is there to lean on, but he won't do the work for you. He will not do that work for you. It's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy. And I'm telling y'all now that it's not. You're going to have to separate yourself. You're going to have to isolate sometimes, but that's good, because when you isolate, you really hear from God. So it's not always a bad thing. But I just know that once I really learned the definition of what spiritual bypassing was, I had never heard that. And I'm sure many of you that's watching this never heard of that. You've never heard of that. They don't say this in the churches. They don't. And it's unconscious that we do this. It's traditional. It's traditional, the things that we do. But you have to get to the core. Like there's a core there. And the core is your inner child. I can't stress that enough. And I'm definitely going to break down what the inner child is, so that you can get more understanding of what it is that you're dealing with, that you're facing. It's definitely sacred work. It's definitely holy work, because once you get to healing that part of you, that's when you start healing for your legacy and your lineage. And that's when you can start passing on true healing, true rest, true knowledge, true wisdom. right? Because we need those things. You know, I always am phrasing the verse that says, my people perish for the lack of knowledge. And unless we have that knowledge, unless we know these definitions, we're going to keep bypassing healing. We're going to keep performing over transforming. I just want to read y'all one more thing. I just want to read one more thing. It says, John 4:24, God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth. It's calling us to connect that is both authentic truth and internal spirit. Authentic is truth. Internal is spirit, right? But generational trauma, especially in the Black community, has deeply fractured both of those. So, how, if we know that trauma fractured our spirit, how are we worshiping in spirit and in truth? It says, how can a community worship in truth when the truth has been buried underneath generational of silence and survival, y'all? Healing repairs, spirit repairs. Repair begins with safety, healing spaces, therapy, honest prayer, safe communities that don't silence pain. Truth telling becomes sacred. Speaking truth about family trauma, church hurt, inner wounds. That's holy work. That's worship. That's holy work and worship. It says, and y'all, I literally gotta take all this as in. I really do, because this is a very uncomfortable topic. And it says, Black communities have always been spiritual, but spirituality without healing becomes performance. Y'all, it's okay to journal. If you can't go to therapy, journaling is a beautiful thing. Because that's another form of telling somebody, because you have to get the energy out. You have to get the trauma out, and talking about it. When you talk, you're going to start remembering things that you promise you forgot. But you got to talk about it. You got to reveal it in order to heal it. My calling is to get y'all uncomfortable so that you can move, because no healing comes in comfort. And I'm here to tell y'all the truth that nobody else is going to speak on, you know. And I know y'all saying, well, how you feel, like, how you know it's true? I'm a living, walking, talking testimony. of everything. And everything that I bring forth, I've experienced. And that's why I experienced it. God led me to research and study it and bring it forth. And that's what I'm doing. So with that being said, I pray. My prayer is that you take the mask off. Take the mask off so you can go deeper in your healing. Not just surface level. Not just sugarcoating to perform and look holy, but for deeper and true freedom. So with that being said, y'all, Life Unmothered will not be airing next week, Thursday. I will not be on next week, Thursday. I have a procedure that's coming up. And so I will not be on next week, Thursday. However, y'all stay tuned because I'm still going to be posting quotes. I'm going to give y'all journal prompts and all of that stuff. And I ask y'all to work the work. With that being said, y'all have a blessed and safe evening. And until next time on Life Unmothered, y'all be easy. One.